Welcome to Leads and Leverage, Real Estate Team Leader Lounge, where success in real estate meets passion-driven leadership. I'm your host, Tyler Gibson. I'm an entrepreneur, real estate team leader, and investor, and I'm thrilled to have you join us in the ultimate hub for real estate excellence. In this exclusive lounge, we're diving deep into strategies, tactics, and stories that fuel the success of real estate teams. Whether you're a seasoned pro looking to take your leadership skills to new heights or an aspiring entrepreneur ready to build your own powerhouse team, this podcast is your go-to resource for insider insights and actionable advice. Get ready to hear from top experts, industry pioneers, and real-world achievers who are making waves in the real estate world. We'll explore the best practices, share invaluable lessons learned, and equip you with tools you need to thrive in today's competitive market. Welcome to the lounge where leaders are made and success is earned. Come on in to the Real Estate Team Leader Lounge. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Leads and Leverage. I am so honored to be joined by author Michael Bell today from Pasadena, California. His book, Cellar Mistakes, is a Wall Street Journal bestseller. Thank you for being here today, Michael.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, you're not the typical guest that we have on here, but still, a high producer, and you lead a team, just not a team of agents. So tell me a little bit about your background, your how long you've been in the business, and what your business looks like today.
Tyler, hey, thanks so much for having me on this podcast. I actually have a lot to learn from you. So I'm in Pasadena, California. I've been selling for about 25 years. I started by flipping houses, and then I found that, let's just say they weren't that professional. A lot of agents aren't that professional, and so I thought I could do this better, and I've done it better. And I had my own brokerage. I guess in a way that is a team, but I was the youngest practicing broker in Pasadena. And I had 10 agents underneath me, and I didn't care for it. It was, that Super Bowl commercial that came out years ago where it was for Yahoo, and it was these wranglers that were out on the range in Texas, and they're trying to lasso a bunch of kittens. And that's kind of the way I felt. As soon as I saw that commercial, I thought, I got to get out of this. So I've been a solo realtor now after flipping properties and having my own brokerage, a solo realtor for about 15, 20 years. And I'm a big proponent of learning from other people and what their processes were. So I wound up going to Keller Williams, which a lot of people say they kind of masquerade as an educational company rather than a real estate company. Sure. And I learned a lot. And so for me, I just focus on listings.
That's awesome. So I know that now you sell a bunch of homes still. What does your team look like today? Because I know that you do lead a team, but because it's not just you. And how many homes are you going to sell this year, or did you sell this year?
This year, here it is, getting close to the end of the year. I'll probably do, I think, 30. And mixed in there are some leases. I like doing leases because it provides an opportunity to develop a relationship, and usually you get hired if you do a great job on a lease, even though you only make a few bucks, as we all know. That's great advice for agents that are looking for more business or ways to make additional income. Don't focus so much on the dollar amount for that particular lease, but the opportunity to build a relationship with somebody who, if you're an educator about the process, will likely become a buyer. Look, this business is all relationships. People do business with you because they like you and they trust you. I'm a big proponent of looking at stats, and we'll talk about my little book that rocketed to number 3 on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. But it's a book about statistics about what works and what doesn't work in this business. And what works is relationships. I mean, that is a continual referral machine for you if you can develop relationships with people. And I raise my hand and say, I'll do a lease all day long. I don't care. I mean, I know I only make a few bucks, but most of the time, if you knock it out of the park, you're going to get that business when they do sell. And oftentimes, look, if somebody's going to lease something, they have another house. So there's an opportunity to get at least 2 deals out of that relationship.
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk about the book a little bit, because it strikes me that this is a great form of leverage.
Oh, all day long. So a quick story about the book, and you can buy it on Amazon if you want, and it's pretty cheap. And if you can go to my website and listen to it for free. The audiobook is free there at michaelbbell.com. There's 2 B's there. What really frustrated me in the industry is that we've always been taught certain ways of doing business. For example, you got to do open houses, you got to do print ads, you have to have your real estate sign out there, you've got to double end, you've got to go after family members, you got to door knock, you got to do all these things, but do they work? And that's what I kept asking myself, is do they work? And the National Association of Realtors puts out a huge survey every year to recent buyers and sellers, and they ask them all these questions as to how they found their realtor. And there's a whole bunch of questions, not a million questions. I think it's 137 questions. And most agents don't dive into this. I dove into it and found some staggering data that, and for me, I kind of thought, well, I'm going to write a white paper on this and be the guy that wrote the white paper. I wound up going to a seminar for a guy. The guy was talking about writing your first book. And I approached him. I said, this is my idea for a book. And he said, I think this would work really well. And I was hoping to sell a few hundred copies. It sold 40,000 copies. So, but to go back to what works and what doesn't work, I mean, if your listeners are listening, and I think most people would agree, open houses really don't sell the house. It doesn't really service the client. It's great for realtors and their leads. But if you read the book, you'll see it's about a 2% effectiveness rate to sell your house. And what's also kind of shocking is, for example, like the real estate sign. It's about a 1% chance of selling your house. And we all know all the problems that a real estate sign creates. And I know I'm going to probably create a whole bunch of havoc. And a lot of people are going to listen to this podcast and say, this guy is off his rocker. But look at the stats. And we all know that the real estate sign can't go viral. It causes problems. It gets people to walk into people's backyards. Most of my clients decide not to use an open house sign. Even print ads. I mean, very few people are waiting for the newspaper boy to show up to do their home search. The print ad is really great for the realtor. There's a 4 or 5 day delay just to get it into the newspaper. In most hot markets, the property is usually sold by then, or the best buyers have already seen the place. But print ads, according to the National Association of Realtors, has a 1% chance of selling.
Yeah. Well, a lot of our listeners are real estate agents. And so, how are you leveraging the book for your business?
So initially the book was, my boys, I got them all to get black belts and Eagle Scouts. And hey, if you start something, you got to finish it. And they turned that on me and said, if you start something, you got to finish it, Dad. So it took me 5 years to write this sucker. And I don't recommend anybody write a book. It's pretty tough. It's my first and last. But now what it's really morphed into is it's in a way, it's kind of like my listing presentation. Sure. I provide the book prior to the interview, or oftentimes they've already read the book and they're picking up the phone and just calling me and say, hey, this resonates, this makes sense. I'd like to hire you. And to go back to what I had earlier said is that I focus on listings. I mean, in this business, if you're the listing agent, you control your destiny, you control your paycheck. I just like that hat that I wear, that listing hat. So I have in part of my team, I have a few realtors in my office that I refer the buyer leads to. But in our marketplace right now, here it is late 2024, most of the people that are selling, they're moving out of California, or they've died, their trust sales, or they're getting rid of their homes because they don't like the rent control stuff that's coming down, has come down the pike, and it's actually getting worse for homeowners, and they just kind of like, well, why do I want to deal with this anymore? So those are our primary sellers right now. So there's not a lot of business here to do two sides, to go out and help somebody find something on the other side of Pasadena and sell their place. That market has really dried up considerably.
Wow. Okay. Well, tell me about your team, because I know that you don't do all this work by yourself. So who do you have helping you? How long have they been working for you? At what point did you decide I need some extra help?
The one thing that's really helped is, of course, technology. And I'm sure most of your listeners, you guys, I'm on the Google platform, so I use Google Drive. We put every file on the drive that we can share. I have a folder of what's called active, which is my current signed deals that I'm working on to either get on the market or get contingencies removed or get closed. And then, but the folder I spend most of my time on is what's called potentials, and everybody's a potential. And I just load that up with as much information as possible. My assistant is the one that would pull tax records, permits, comps, all this other stuff. So I'm prepared when I call those people or when I follow up with them. So I leverage that. And then, of course, I have another folder called closed, and the whole goal is to get it from potential to active to closed. I have a full-time assistant I've had well, right now he's almost like a virtual assistant, but I've had him for 10 years. He's licensed. He's gone through this journey where he was a real estate agent, and he would rather be in the support role. And that was what really keyed me into hiring him, because I didn't really want somebody to use me as a stepping stone and use my knowledge. And I'm fine with that. It's just I don't want to have to rehire every 3 years, which is what I was doing before.
How many? So that's interesting. How many assistants have you had? You mentioned that you're hiring every 3 years. So how many assistants have you been through till you found one that became more like a pseudo business partner because they just wanted to stay in their lane?
My assistant James, he's a rock star. I think he's been with me 11 or 12 years. The other assistants, I've probably had 4 of them.
Wow.
And in this business, of course, if you don't have an assistant, then you are the assistant.
Right.
So there's plenty of things you can keep an assistant busy with. And even if you don't have an assistant, you're thinking about getting one, go out and get a virtual assistant. There's a number of companies that train these folks either in I think the big places are El Salvador and the Philippines. Mm-hmm. They don't have heavy accents. They're trained in real estate, the basics of real estate, and they can make phone calls for you. They can build out files and folders. They can build out touch campaigns for you. There's a bunch of stuff they could do. You'd be a fool not to do it. And you can pay them only like $10 an hour. And that includes their vacation and their benefits, and they're supporting their families with that money. But that's just a no-brainer. If you're a solo agent thinking, what do I do? Do that. And you can work with them part-time.
And if they'd like to pay less than $10 an hour, they can hire them direct, but then they have to train them.
But then they have to train
That's what I do. I hired mine direct, but I was fortunate. My most recent assistant, she's a rock star. She had past experience. She had worked for Keller Williams offices and Remax offices in the past. So she had real estate experience. She wasn't familiar with Florida regulations, but I can teach that stuff. And most virtual assistants, they can do anything you can teach them how to do. And you can hire them for less than $10 an hour. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Oh, you're absolutely right.
$10 an hour would be a great wage. If you hire through a company, that's what you'll pay. If you hire somebody directly, it'll be less. So, well, that's awesome. So James has been with you full time, and then there's another person that helps you. How does the other person assist you?
The other person is my wife. She does a lot of my other paperwork. So, look, my job is to develop relationships and develop leads and lead follow-up. And I'm a big disciple or proponent of the KW model, the Keller Williams model, the Red Book, the millionaire real estate agent. And when I saw that, there you go. When I saw that triangle, there's a triangle there, and it's the three things that you should be working on. It's called the 3 L's, and it's listings, leads, leverage. And for me, that was like, that blew my mind. Yeah. And I realized, okay, so you should be working on leads, and if you're working on leads, you've got a whole bunch of listings, and if you got all that going, then you're going to need leverage, and it's just this cycle that keeps going, and you can build that out. I had a lot of different little teams here and there. I just been a lone wolf, and I'm fine with it. But there's no way I could do this without these other assistants. I mean, I do more business than the vast majority of realtors, and I love to share my story, and I love to share like what I do, and it's not that difficult. But most people, I mean, I'm probably, we have 50 agents at Sotheby's in Pasadena, and there's only one other agent that has an assistant. I think everybody should have an assistant. And one of the things that it'll do for you, if you get an assistant, you at the back of your mind, you're going to constantly think of, what could I do? What should I be doing to keep them busy? It actually forces you to be more efficient. It forces you to let go of things that you shouldn't be doing. There's a lot of stuff you shouldn't be doing, and you should pass it off. Hopefully you only have to train them once or twice, and get that stuff off your plate. Leverage, leverage, leverage.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you immediately had to get off your plate?
Oh gosh, I mean, there's just so many. One of the things is really building out the file. Imagine you talk to somebody and they're thinking about selling their house, or you heard that they're thinking about selling their house. It could take it a few hours to pull all, because you want to sound like you're smart. You want to sound like you know what you're talking about in the neighborhood. You kind of know that their house is whatever, 2,500 square feet. You got to pull all that information, and you could spend hours doing that and trying to figure out, if it's a seller's market or a buyer's market in their area, or what happened to the house across the street. Those are all things that you can take off your plate and put on somebody else if you've trained them. So for example, like, just to get really technical, in Google Drive, we'll just create a folder. There's a folder in my potentials folder, and the folder will just be labeled with the address. And I'll have a trend analysis graph there that we can pull off the MLS. We'll have MLS comps, we'll have the tax records. Oftentimes we can pull permits from the local city. You can just pull it off online. But it's kind of amazing when you talk to somebody after you've done all of that. Maybe you talk to them a few hours later, and you can talk to them with authority, because oftentimes when I talk to somebody like that after just talking to them a few hours earlier, they're blown away that I know that the house down the street had 9 offers and the other house has been sitting, and what's going on in the neighborhood in terms of days on market and stuff like that. And there's no reason for you to do that yourself. You can have your assistant do all of that, and James will open up a Google Doc, and he'll just sometimes he'll put my talking points in there, and I'll go through and look at all the data. And it takes me 3 minutes to look at all the data and go, wow, now guess who's the expert on the first phone call? Most agents don't do that.
Yeah. That's a powerful form of leverage. Yeah. Getting all that data in one place and being able to prepare quickly for the next call. So you got that off your plate. How do you spend that time you got back?
So for me, I just focus on leads and lead follow-up. I'm constantly networking, going out. I enjoy what I do. I like networking. If you're a realtor, you should be having lunch with somebody new every single day. You got to eat. It doesn't mean you got to take them to a nice restaurant. You take them to a sandwich place, but I book my lunches out. There's a book out there called Never Eat Alone, and I never read the book, and I already got it. I don't eat alone. Every single day for lunch, I'm doing something with somebody that potentially could be a referral partner or a seller or something. And it's I don't do the dinner thing. I'd rather be home. I feel like being a listing agent, it allows me to have a lot of balance in my life. I'm home every night at 6 o'clock, and I don't really work that much on the weekends. I don't do open houses. I've sold 675 homes in my career. I've done maybe 11 open houses in my entire career. I've never really cared for them.
Yeah.
So I have my weekends free. I mean, I'm like a 9 to 5, 9 to 6 realtor, and very, very efficient, and we get it done, and we do a very, very good job. But the idea that you have to be pulled in two ways every day, all day long, you don't have to do that.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, you just have so much clarity on the type of business that you want to have and who you want to serve. And you've created great balance for yourself. And you've just built a very intentional lifestyle, not only in the way that you go about doing your business, but also, creating barriers, boundaries. And so many real estate agents don't have that kind of balance. It is truly a luxury. Would you so you said people shouldn't write their own book. Is that just because it was hard for you, or but you feel like it gives you credibility when you're talking with sellers, or you're sending this to people ahead of time in preparation to meet with you?
Absolute credibility. I have an agent that in Atlanta that bought a bunch of my books, and she sends this book ahead of her, for her potentials. And she lets them know that I use these principles to sell homes, and this helps her. She bought 30 copies and sent them to me and asked me to sign them, and then I shipped them to her. It was kind of expensive for her to do that because they're heavy, they're hardcover. It's a real book. It's thick. It's I don't know, 150 pages. But that works for her. And I'll give you all the principles really quick. The main principle in the book, and this is all for anybody that's listening, this is really kind of basic, but I tell people that they should definitely interview at least 3 agents, and they should be local and they should be top agents. You do the same thing if you're going to get knee surgery. You want the best surgeon. Same thing with real estate. An amazing stat that I found is that 75% of all home sellers, they interview only one agent. And oftentimes they use their friends and family. And there's a whole chapter about why sellers shouldn't use their friends and family. Only 10% of all home sellers interview 3 or more. And then what's also another staggering stat is 75% of all home sellers never use the same agent again. They're disappointed in their choice usually, or that realtor has just never stayed in contact.
Never pays attention to
them again. 87%, this is a crazy stat, 87% of all realtors are out of the business within 5 years. So I tell sellers, hey, if you're interviewing somebody that has been in the business for 5 years or less, sorry, you guys, but there's an 87% chance that you're going to be out of the business. It's really important for people to use experienced people, and especially in this marketplace, because it's a goofy marketplace for the last few years. Low inventory, but it's different everywhere.
Yeah.
The other principles I talk about is I talk about. Well, let me back up. If most of my clients turn into be friends, and most of them will give me a lot of feedback while I'm selling their house or after. And what most of them have always said to me is, we all sound the same. Okay. If you sound the same as everybody else, there's no reason for them. You need to be different. And and the brain is always looking for something that's different. So if you can be different and approach your listing appointments a little bit differently. For example, I tell people right up front in the first 2 minutes of the interview, and this is going to be shocking to some of your client, your audience, but I tell them I won't represent a buyer on their transaction, that I'll represent them from beginning to end. I'm only going to represent them. I believe in what's called a fiduciary duty. and that will actually get you more money. And it's going to encourage the marketplace to write offers on your properties. I know that, if you can double and you make a lot of extra money, in some situations it's warranted. I get it. But if you can come into a listing appointment and build that trust and be upfront and tell them within the first 2 minutes, this is what makes me different. People key into what's different. Tell them, this is what makes me different. I'm not going to represent a buyer on your transaction. I'm going to do ding, 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 all these things. And by the way, I'm not going to make any mistakes. These are the main mistakes, according to the National Association of Realtors, that people make. I'm not going to make these mistakes.
Yeah.
That's the reason why the house down the street had to keep doing price reductions before they sold it. This is what happened up the street, yada, yada, yada. If you want to make the most amount of money, this is the path.
Yeah.
I mean, I nail 95% of my listing appointments if I get an opportunity to sit on the kitchen table with them.
That's incredible. Well, so what's next? And where again is the best place for people to get access to the book?
Well, if you want to buy the book, you just go on Amazon. They're like $20.
Okay.
If you go to my website, if you feel like listening to me for 2.5 hours, you can do it for free. And I have the audio book there. You can stream it. You can download it if you want. You can listen to it on YouTube. It's michaelbbell.com, 2 B's. And, I think that there's a lot of, it was eye-opening that nobody's written a book like this. Nobody's really exposed this. When I did research on writing this book, I kind of thought somebody else has written this book, but most of the real estate books out there are about, they're brag books, or they're talking about some basic stuff like staging and curb appeal. I think the word staging is only used once in my entire book. I don't talk about staging in my book. It is important, but we're talking about the mistakes that people make.
Right.
And almost all my clients, they read the book, or if they don't read the book, they're like, oh my God, this is the guy that wrote the book. And they don't even read the book, but they hire me.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today. I appreciate your insights. I look forward to finishing the book. I did take a look through the principles in the back summary, but look forward to finishing it. Thanks for everybody that's listening to the podcast today. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Leads and Leverage. I hope you found our conversation insightful and actionable. Remember, success in real estate is not just about transactions. It's about the relationships you build, the teams you lead, and the impact you make in the lives of others. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay connected with our community of real estate leaders and entrepreneurs, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us bring you more valuable content and guests. Don't forget to visit our website, gpghome.com/leads and leverage for additional resources, show notes, and exclusive updates. You can also follow me on Instagram at real_Tyler Gibson to join the conversation and connect with like-minded individuals. See you next week.